Every denomination and every synod within the Lutheran Church has their own particular name for their youth group. When I was in North Carolina, I had an opportunity to go with my friends to a lot of various youth groups and a lot of different denominations. I enjoyed them all. When I was around some of my Methodist friends, we would go to MYF. That was called Methodist Youth Fellowship. And we would have a light dinner. Then we would have a skit or some kind of dialogue where we learned a biblical teaching. And when I was with my Baptist friends, and if you live in North Carolina and you don't have Baptist friends, you have no friends. Because that whole state is owned and operated by the Baptist church. And that's okay. That's Billy Graham's territory. He's a good man. We all know that. Their youth group was called BTU, Baptist Training Union. And I would go there, and it was basically the same. We'd have a light supper. Then we'd have a skit or some biblical lesson. And then we would spend 30 minutes being told that if you weren't baptized by immersion, you weren't going to go to heaven. You've heard that before, hadn't you? And for the rest of the evening, I felt afraid. But in the Lutheran Church, they also had different kinds of names for the youth groups. Some churches would call their youth group Lutheran Youth, or Luther whatever. Well, the Missouri Synod, which I grew up in, would not name anything that was like any of the other Lutherans. We had our own separate name for our youth group, and it was called Walther League. Any of you remember Walther League? Any old Missouri Lutherans in here? You do. You remember that? Walther, Dr. Walther, was the first president of the Lutheran Church Missouri Synod. And so in honor of him, we called our youth group Walther League. And our youth group did pretty much what every other youth group did. We would get together. We would have a light supper, and then we would do a skit or a play or a dialogue or something where we learned a biblical teaching. Well, the one I remember most was about this particular gospel lesson about the man who had been born blind and then given his sight. In order to make the point, our youth sponsors, we met in this big fellowship hall in the basement. I take big back because there's no such thing as big and Lutheran in North Carolina. If you want to go to a Lutheran church in North Carolina, it's usually about this big right here. Because there's just not many of us in the South. And I imagine you're wondering, well, how did Holy Trinity get to be so big? Well, 90% of you are from Ohio. And the other 10% are Baptists that have come over. Glad to have you, every one of you. But anyway, we met down in the fellowship hall, and the youth director at that time was Mr. Heck. He was a parent, and he wanted us to really understand this particular gospel lesson. So to do that, each person who was participating that night in Walther League would be blindfolded. And then through the blindfolds, did I do that? Where was I? Something about the blindfold. Okay. Every one of us at one point in time would be blindfolded, and then we had to find a wooden cross that would be placed somewhere in the fellowship hall. And I was a whole lot smarter than my youth director. There was no way in the world a blindfold was going to keep me, a future Lutheran pastor, from finding that cross. So what I was going to do, and I'm pretty smart, you know that, and I listened, Stan, to his footsteps real carefully. And I was going to follow where his footsteps went, and there would be the cross. I had no idea, after they blindfolded me and he placed the cross, that they would turn me in 30 circles. We only had 5 minutes to find the cross. After that 5 minutes, If we didn't find the cross, someone would undo the blindfold so we could see where it was and how far we missed finding the cross. Well, nobody was able to find the cross. We stumbled over stuff, we tripped, we fell down, but nobody was able to find the cross until somebody took off our blindfold. And I thought that was an awesome way to learn about God's grace and how nobody can come to know or believe that Jesus is the Christ without some kind of help from the Holy Spirit to give us vision. However, the reason I remember this particular evening so well is because what ensued after that particular exercise was a discussion about this particular gospel lesson. And what troubled us was the question: was this man born blind because of his sin or because of his parents' sin? In other words, would God intentionally cause this young man to be born blind simply to make a point? And we all thought, there's no way in the world God would even think something like that. And then we had to read in the Old Testament from the book of Exodus. And God, you said this. You started this. I'm not making this up. God said in Exodus 25, and I'm glad there are no clouds out today, I, the Lord God, am a jealous God. I punish the children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generations. I punish the children for the sins of their parents to the third and fourth generations. In the mind of the disciples, they were still thinking about God and His relationship with people in the Old Testament. And I read in one commentary that the book of Job kind of taught us differently, that you didn't necessarily have to sin to have bad things happen to you in this world. However, if you look carefully at the book of Job, would God enter into a bet with the devil, wiping out Job's family, wiping out his children, his land, his crops, and everything, giving Job terrible diseases just to win a bet with the devil? Well, think about that. We argued and we argued and we argued. But after the evening was over, nobody said they wanted any part of a God that would bring sickness upon an individual or an unborn child simply to make a point. So, what we Lutherans are good at is changing the text. It never says here that God made this person blind. What it does say, and I've got the Greek here. I want to make sure I got this so when I give you my translation, you'll understand why mine is even better. It says here, he might be manifested. Let me get it straight here. My Greek is really rusty. This child was born so that the works of God might be manifested through him. It says, in order that this God's glory might be manifested through him. So this is the Grunke translation. This child, since, the word since this child was born blind, I am going to use his blindness as an opportunity to reveal God's glory. In other words, regardless of the reason that this child was born blind, I am going to take his blindness as an opportunity to reveal the glory of God. That speaks more favorably to Jesus and God in the new covenant than does the book of Exodus or the book of Job. Now, if I thought for 1 minute that I was proclaiming a God that would give an innocent, unborn child a disease simply to make a point, or to punish us by giving us some kind of disease because of one sin or another, I'm not so sure I'd be a Christian. If anybody were to come up to me and tell me that God caused my son to have the illness that he did simply to make a point, I would be very upset. And if it was proven to be right, I probably wouldn't be here today preaching you the good news of Jesus Christ. Rick Warren, as you know, is the pastor of probably of the largest Christian church in all of the United States of America. Well, he was on one of the morning news programs the other day, and you know his son committed suicide. And so they asked him about that. And he said God did not cause his son to commit suicide. But he said something after that that was very helpful to me and to the whole listening audience and was very profound. God does not waste hurt. Get it? God does not waste hurt. And so Rick Warren was going to use his son's suicide to try to educate people in the signs of depression and the signs of suicide. And so he's dedicated a portion of his life now to educating people over things that he didn't know about before his own son committed suicide. And so the New Testament God that we believe in, Jesus Christ, brings about a new covenant. And this new covenant says that he will use every opportunity, every tragedy, every illness as an opportunity to reveal his glory and his grace. I went to see Tom Ballantyne yesterday, and I don't know if you know Tom or not, but he's been going through I don't know how many months of intense chemotherapy and radiation for throat cancer. Well, I went over yesterday because his last treatment was Friday, and I wanted to celebrate with him, that he was through his treatment. He was laying on the couch watching some, I don't know, redneck thing, something about something. Duck Dynasty, is that what it is? I guess the guy was trying to sell duck collars or something, but I've never watched it. They're all ugly, those people on there. And what's this thing with beards nowadays? Y'all people, you shave. The beards, they're not cute. Where was I? Oh, Tom. Anybody in here got a beard? If you do, I apologize. Oh, there's one right over there. You go down to CVS to get you a razor and shave that off this afternoon. Anyway, I was talking to Tom, and I said, Tom, we are here to celebrate the end of your chemo and radiation and pray that nothing ever comes back with regards to this throat cancer. But before I leave, I want you to tell me what you did wrong to deserve such an illness. I didn't say that. And neither would God give Tom or any of us an illness to prove a point. So this is what I want us to take away from this lesson. We live in a world filled with challenges, tragedies, sickness. We have mortal bodies. They are going to get sick. We're all going to one day leave this earth and go to the kingdom of heaven. But ever when you get an illness of any kind, remember, it is God that will see you through this. It will be God that will give you the strength to endure. But it will never be God who is responsible for whatever illness might come our way. So, the blindfold has been lifted from all of your eyes and my eyes too. And we are now able to see the truth. We're now able to see Jesus Christ as the Messiah. We're now able to find the cross, God's plan of salvation. And we know that one day, through this vision that He has given us, we will see Him face to face. And so today we are here to celebrate that God has made this blind man able to see, and that He has given us spiritual vision to say and to believe that Jesus is the Christ. Let us stand.